Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining me in another episode of Pipeline, where I get to discuss art and the creative processes with musicians, authors, chefs, educators, people who are doing a lot of creative and innovative things. Today, my guest is Moji Abiola. She's a singer-songwriter. I've known her for the past 10 years. Where has the time gone? So Moji, thank you for being on Pipeline. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. I am coping as best I can. I think I'm kind of sick of hearing the term during these uncertain times, but they really are uncertain. And but it's, I think that's the kind of avenue and venue where we can really create and cause a lot of turmoil and distraction that can actually bring forth something interesting. So it's exciting and also kind of scary. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point to make about, for creativity and being an artist. This is, uh, it, I'm not going to use uncertain times. It definitely interesting times. But where are you currently?
Right now I am hunkered down and I'm social distancing with family in Northern Virginia, actually.
Okay,
So
good.
I was in Austin for a bit and decided I think I kind of need family. I need a little bit of my safety blanket. So it was nice to have that. So I'm really feeling very grateful. Yeah.
And everybody as well?
Everybody's really well. We thank God, and just everybody's doing okay, trying to keep sane, trying to keep centered. It's good.
Excellent, excellent. So good to hear. Now, I was talking to you before we started the show. Three of the things I ask my guests is, what's an important project that you've worked on in the past that was maybe challenging or meaningful to you? Then I ask about, a current project that you're working on, and then finally, what's your plan for upcoming projects?
Sure.
So I kind of like to start with the question about maybe something in the last 5 or 10 years that
Mm.
has really been important to you, that has had an effect on you.
Well, I think for me, it would be there was a period of about 2 or 3 years of trying to balance my day job. I was an engineer in the energy sector for a really long time as my primary focus, and trying to balance it, or trying to find if there was a balance between doing this is my career, and then realizing that the scale of, as far as what I wanted to focus my time on, my energy, and even like my financial stuff on, was kind of gearing more and more toward the music side. So it it was a 2-year process of trying to figure out, well, how do I kind of move myself kind of energy wise, finances, and how do I plan to become a full-time musician? And that was a project that I don't know that there's any roadmap on, because each and every person's situation is different, like other people, student loans and debt and family situations, marital status, all of those things kind of play in. And in some ways I was more free, but in other ways I was far more tied down. So trying to unwind myself from certain levels of comfort, even there was that psychological of like that component of, all right, you're going to be a musician, you are going to be a struggling musician after having been so comfortable for such a long time, and trying to really kind of taper down my needs, wants, must-haves. And it's still an ongoing process, but that was a really interesting couple of years of saying, all right, by this date, this is when life is going to change. And I didn't know at the time, but I guess the universe had kind of conspired to where the energy market had changed and the company I had been working for was going through restructuring. So it was a time where I could be like, hey, this is actually really coinciding with this life plan that I have for myself. I'd like to leave. Thank you. I'll take this package and I'll go. So it was nice to have, a little bit of a bit more of a financial cushion because of that. but it did not really prepare me for, all right, well, my life as an engineer is very kind of rigorous, structured. How do I now become disciplined in a completely different way? How do I make sure I write every day? How do I make sure that I'm not thinking of like, oh, I'm just on a very long vacation being a musician? So the project was kind of twofold. How do I spend, the time planning for that change in lifestyle? And then also, how do I make sure I'm putting in the work and putting in the effort of being a musician in the right way? Speaking to other people, and not just when you go to gigs, you have to understand that you're there and this is now your job. You're clocking in. You have to network. You have to find people. You have to really try and seek out the good in what you're trying to achieve, because it's really a kind of thankless endeavor. Nobody becomes a musician and then, next week they're, winning awards. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You have to kind of be in the pits for a little bit,
Yeah.
So realizing that there is a lot of planning and mental preparation that has to go into it, and also trying to devise what success looks like to you.
And what did it look like to you at that time?
Well, like I'd mentioned before, I mean, in my head, I'm like, I want to be like, yeah, I want to win a Grammy. Yeah, I want to, be on a world tour and have my face on a plane. But like, okay, look like between now and then. And for me, it was really building my musical knowledge, building my musical discipline, not only just letting the creative process be dependent upon inspiration, realizing that, I'm going to have to pay for like music lessons. I'm going to have to figure out how to taper down well, I could go to party or this thing, or I could go on this trip, or I could save that money for studio time, or, really frugal with items that you have. You want to kind of be bohemian and like go any old way, but you really have to start to be disciplined about, you're getting older. You have to make sure you provide for yourself, be as wise as you can financially. And for me, that was realizing that if I can be better at a song that I wrote than I was last week, that's success. If I can grow musically, like instead of just saying, all right, well, I'm going to free flow this one song, and then get better at editing, get better at composing, get better at seeking out help, talking to people. And, like I have to be very closed off in order to be strong. There's a lot of strength and it's a muscle that you have to grow. And being really aware of, you want to pull in the good people toward you. So learning how to identify, how are my views or my values aligned with someone, and realizing that you have to have a bit of thick skin. So growing myself emotionally, growing myself from a disciplined standpoint, and really learning how to tell myself no to things and then saying yes to the hard things.
So what were some of the things what were some of the hardest things that you had to say no to?
Some that I had to say no to were just giving up. I had to say no to giving up, just like calling it quits. Because there are going to be really like fun highs, where you wrote this amazing song and somebody loves it, and or like you really click with somebody, and then you put something out there and it has a lot of great following and fanfare, but for one reason or another there's a hiccup in the road, and like the car that you're driving in, this momentum, it stalls out, or there's a flat tire, and you have yourself, well, I can see where I started from. I could easily go back, or I could just, figure out how to change this tire, or just walk the rest of the way. And some projects fell through, and then just financial things happened, and I was just like, well, I'm just gonna quit music, and I'm just gonna go get a job, and I don't care what kind of job it was. I'm just gonna go back. And then something says, well, it doesn't hurt. You can look for a job where you could do this thing part time and really start to taper in things. So instead of giving up, I had to figure out a way to do it. I had to figure out how to search within myself and ask myself, is there more that I can offer this? And is there more that this can offer me? And I really had to change my point of view about how music could be integrated within my life. Instead of thinking I'm going to be this rock star, I was saying, well, if you're not a world touring rock star, is that failure? And I was like, no. And then I said, if it's not failure, then you should keep going.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and you mentioned part of the responsibilities are, networking and getting to know others in the business. I was there the night you got on stage with Glenn Hansard the first time. You then met Eddie Vedder. You met members of Bruce Springsteen's band. Have those uh, uh, meetings, meeting those people, how has that shaped your view of the music industry? Or, has it been, what kind of experience is that, meeting people who are at that level?
well, it's weird because in a way it's, first off, it was pretty amazing. It was just this very strange, it was actually Friday the 13th when that happened. And it was a very strange, like cosmic alignment. And from then on, it just made me realize that everything that I thought of in my mind of, like, rock stars and like these big, international, touring acts, I was expecting it to be crazy and insane, super fun, super normal people. Like, it was surprisingly normal, like very fun, really like welcoming and warm. But it changed my idea of, maybe the idea of a rock star or like a super world famous musician is a bit outdated. I think in the 80s and 90s, and maybe in certain genres like hip hop, they're still really very like insane women, flashing all that, but
Mhm.
not so much anymore. I think people are starting to realize that, the mental health component requires that, try not to lean too hard on your vices, sort of thing. And so being in that atmosphere made me realize, these are people who have taken on the responsibility of putting every single person who is a member of their crew, who is a member of their lighting, situation, production. These are all people who are depending on them to be able to tour.
Mhm.
And touring is rigorous
Mhm.
and it's a lot of energy output. So they're really responsible. They have a good time, but it's not like, they can't make the next show kind of thing. So
Right.
seeing that really changed my mind of like, oh, this is how you have a sustainable career. You pace yourself in all things, So seeing that kind of showed me that you can be a normal person and still be a musician. You don't have to be crazy every night. Some nights are going to get a little wild, but it doesn't have to be every night. But then what they've also helped me see is it takes a lot of time to get to that level. It takes a lot of time and effort and input and learning and crafting to get to that level. So
Mhm.
I think it really made me reevaluate the fact that sometimes you want to press the fast forward button, but really the strength comes in the time that it takes to learn those intangible lessons, song crafting and banter, and really getting to know who you are so that you can then convey that to through performance.
Yeah, there's a singer-songwriter I know and I've followed a long time and had the honor to play with him once, named Jason Ringenberg, and
Mm.
he said there's no shortcuts.
Mm.
That there's just no shortcuts. you got to go through all that process of learning your craft and the business, and it's not like, you know, a show on TV where you win a talent show and then
Fast forward
yeah,
5 months later, you're on the Grammy stage. I mean, maybe it's happening to some people, but the 0.1% probably, right?
right. Right. So, what is a current project that you're working on? What's going on now?
Oh goodness. I have just finished recording my, I guess I want to say solo EP. I spent quite a bit of time. I'm not going to actually say how long it's taken between like writing and fleshing out the songs, like chord structure. Because for me, I don't know if might need to go through my process, but I'm the person who will be driving and I will just have like the song like kind of like download into my brain, and I'll just lyrics, melody, everything kind of comes, and it's almost like I can hear the music playing in a different room down the hall. So it's very fuzzy. And the more I sing it, the more I can flesh out, okay, this is what the bass line's doing, and then this is what the pianos are doing, and this is what the guitar is doing. So for me, a person who's not classically trained as far as music and like listening by ear kind of thing, or playing by ear, I have had to go through the process of teaching myself, okay, what are the chords that I'm hearing? What are those what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Try to teach myself guitar. That is, wow, whoever plays guitar, my hat is off. My fingers don't do it. They try. So I'm like, okay, now it's like keyboard. So coming up with like bass lines via keyboard, and then stacking vocal harmonies and putting them in a good enough place where I then got to work with my really good friend and producer, Carrie McGraw out of Austin. And we were working on my EP, and it's called Women of a Certain Age. And I'm really so excited about it because it's me looking at the kind of life lessons that I've been dealing with as a woman now that I'm in my early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where what you knew when you were 18 is so different than what you learned when you were 25. And then what you learned when you were 35 is so much different than what you learned when you were, 25. But I come from a really kind of strong traditional background. I'm Nigerian heritage. And a question started kind of turning in my mind of like, my grandmother's passed, but I was thinking, could my grandmother ever have imagined me, single, very educated, woman, unmarried, no children? Could she ever imagine me living in this life, in this context, when she was, 20? She
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even fathom it, growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, or living in the more rural part of Nigeria. It's just something that I was thinking, that I was raised by a woman who was raised by a woman who could not have imagined the world I'm living in.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, what does that mean for me and my preparedness for my life? Just traditionally speaking, I'm still anchored by these conservative values, even though my mother is very progressive, it's still in there. It's still subliminally, subconsciously in there. And how has that affected my going about my life and the lessons that I've learned and how I feel? Like, I don't know that I ever got a rebellious phase. I mean, I listened to like some heavy rock music when I was like 15, but that was about it, So in my mind, I feel like me doing this at this point in my life is like my rebellious phase. So Blase Blase is a song about just kind of wanting to shake off the weight of like society's BS. Like, just let me live my life. Just, this is who I am now. I don't want to fit into your box. Just like, let me be who I am. Let me float through my life unencumbered. I don't want to be moored to this drama and like these societal obligations. Just let me figure out my own way, kind of thing. And then growing up with the influences of my mom having first come to the country, to America in the 70s. And she first, during college, she was in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like, between the snow and everyone listening to like Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, like I didn't know what to do, but then she became a huge Dolly Parton fan. So I remember just like growing up and like hearing my mom sing in a country accent to Dolly Parton. I'm just like, what is going on? But that kind of made its way to another song on the album, on the EP, and it's the title song, Women of a Certain Age. And it's essentially kind of me having a conversation with myself about all the life lessons that I've been taught are expected of a woman. You have to look good, you have to be smart, but not too smart, be sexy, but not too sexy. These kind of impossible boundaries, and how even though I'm extremely progressive and very much like independent, strong woman, you still want companionship. And because that's tied to all these other social norms, you have to, in fact, fold and bend and twist yourself into these situations just so that at least you get through the door, So it's just really interesting to be able to put that out there, because it's my own solo thing and I don't have to think about anybody else's like, I don't want to play this or kind of thing. So it's really a fun place to be. Yeah. So that's coming out.
Well, that it's interesting you mentioned Dolly Parton, because she's traditional in her way, but at the same time she's a very strong woman. She's very independent, and I was listening to a little bit of a podcast that about her recently, and I haven't heard the whole thing, but what I heard, I think it's Dolly Parton's America is what it's called. But she never identified as a feminist, but a lot of people see her as a very strong, independent woman.
Sure.
Who, she made the choices of how to dress, how to wear makeup, things like that. So it was her choice, not somebody else telling her to do this. And I'm just wondering, you said your mom was listening to her. Maybe some of that filtered down to you. You mentioned your grandmother probably couldn't have imagined a granddaughter who's basically very independent on her own.
Independent.
So I'm just wondering, did you listen to any Dolly Parton? It
wasn't until probably maybe the last 10, 15 years I was listening. Growing up, it's one of those things. When you're a kid, you're kind of by proxy listening to your parents' music, but you're not really, maybe, I don't know if it's a stubborn thing or you're just like, oh, parents are not cool enough. But for the most part, I was it's like a Sunday, Saturday morning sort of thing where it's just in the house. I don't know that my antenna was really receiving what was being played. But I think definitely when I moved to Texas, I started kind of listening to more country music. And I just love the tone of her voice. So it was just so pleasant to listen to. And then her storytelling, she's an immense storyteller. What she can convey in like 3 to 4 minutes. Like, come on, Dolly, cut us a break. Like, let's get serious here. So I started listening to it from that perspective, and I was just like, wow, I didn't no wonder mom likes her. Yeah. Really great. But there's always this there's honesty about her music when she's writing. You feel like she could be every single person that she's writing about, and also that you could know every person she's writing about.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it just feels very natural and really honest.
Yeah.
And she's not shy about the subject matter. It just seems super, just very authentic about the point of view from which she's writing the song. So I always felt like it really pursue that once I started kind of tapping into like the Dolly Parton like ethos of just like be yourself, be fearlessly yourself, and have a good sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
So
So do you, when you're as a lyricist, when you're
mm,
working on lyrics, are you trying to tell a story, or are you looking at more abstract ideas in your lyrics, or is it a mix of both, changes from song to song?
I will say, I was actually thinking about this just earlier last week, that I feel like my songwriting has changed because I'm not afraid to say what I'm trying to say anymore. I think for a long time, for me, it was almost like sitting in a math class and looking at a very complicated equation and knowing that this is a theorem that I need to use to solve this differential equation, but not really understanding why. So I had this emotion or this feeling, but I didn't really know how to convey it. So I was kind of burying it in a lot of like metaphor and simile, a lot of very floral, abstract, beautiful things, which is cool. But if I looked at the song, I'm like, I don't really know that I know what I'm trying to say here. And I think over time, as maybe, I don't know if my like emotional maturity has improved, or just a better understanding of who I am or who I am in the world, or a better understanding of the world, I feel like I'm more able to just call red red. And I'm being a lot more honest and straightforward. And I think I've made the conscious decision, at least in this EP and these group of songs, to really just speak plainly.
Mm-hmm.
Just be very, very, a lot more honest. Now, don't get me wrong, I like that weird, like esoteric, like what is happening? What is she talking about? I love complicated music. I love it when the singer doesn't even know what the song is about. But I think,
Happens to me a lot.
right? But I think I'm at the place in my life where I'm like, if nobody else knows what is going on, I want to know what's going on in the song, like,
Right.
so that's where I am. I think I might probably revert back to like very floral and abstract kind of songs in a little bit, but for right now, it's nice to speak plainly for a bit.
Nice. So my last question is, what are the future projects you're looking at? Anything you
Right.
can talk about?
Well, it's weird. I don't really know how long this whole coronavirus thing is going to last, but I was I was supposed to be like doing this big move to Texas, back to Texas, going to Austin, and this whole kind of thing just kind of threw me for a loop a bit. Um, got the EP out of it, super happy about that, but trying to figure out, how to balance career and music. But at this point, I'm like, well, I might as well just write another record. So, so that's what I'm doing. I have one in the can. The Women of a Certain Age is done, and then I have this other really kind of esoteric, like it's an electronic album that I'm writing right now, and it's like samples and beats, and it's very like trying to use a lot of like Nigerian and West African polyrhythms and things of that nature, but make it like if you were in Berlin at a dance club.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the influence of technology on the human experience from a point of like, who are we once we're in this digital space? Who are we, and how does being so detached from human nature, how does that affect us and our relationships with ourselves and each other? And just trying to kind of take a look at these themes. So that's in the works as well. but I don't really know how to plan on performing. That's like, would be the next big project, how to
Yeah.
put all these things out into the world and be there.
That could be a while.
Yeah.
It can be a
So in
while.
my head, I'm wondering if the next big project is to figure out how to like turn my bedroom into a performance space and like just get a bunch of cameras and like just kind of rave out to, like how do I how do I do that? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
kind of.
So, Woman of a Certain Age, is that the title? Do we
Yeah.
have a release date?
I'm releasing every single on the EP, as every song on the EP as a single. So
Okay.
this month it's going to be Blase Blah. On May 22nd, on June 19th is going to be Deep Down, and then every month after that is going to be a new single.
Okay. And where will that be available? iTunes or
It's going to
Spotify?
be iTunes, Spotify, and I'll also have it on my Bandcamp. Bandcamp. I'm setting all that up right now.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're still, writing and working on the music and
Gosh, slowly but surely. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Is one.
yeah, exactly.
Learning.
Exactly.
Good to
Well,
talk to you,
Moji, it's been. I'm so happy you had time to visit me on this show, and I can't wait to hear the new singles come out. Looking forward to that, and I hope you'll be interested in visiting us again.
Sure thing. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye,
Talk
people.
to you soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.